Greetings and welcome again, my fellow Americans, to another edition of Political Stew. Here we are again talking about my good old organization, Black Lives Matter. These people are fools, and the people who agree with them and the people who follow them. I'm talking about the foundation. Obviously, all lives matter. Black lives are a life, and so it matters. The question keeps on being posed to Black Lives Matter, and they've had to try to shift in order to not have to address the actual truth. So they're trying to blur their position, and we're going to get into this, right? So the big thing that happened a few weeks ago was Terry Crews was on CNN with Don Lemon, and Terry Crews was like, if Black Lives Matter, then how come we're not upset? How come they're not upset about children being shot by the gang members, or sometimes people with not within their movement, but who are within their unit movement, right? Not in Black Lives Matter per se, but who are in the vicinity, right? So, well, we can't take responsibility for everybody. So in Virginia, right, there was that whole big march that they did on Capitol Hill, on the Capitol, when they were doing some crazy stuff about guns. So they were marching and they had the guns, and the media kept on talking about the potential of how dangerous everything was, and the news media kept on portraying it how it was potentially dangerous. Oh, it was a potentially dangerous. Here we have riots and protests, which seem to be, according to the way that all the news media outlets are reporting on this, which seem to be the majority of these places that are being protested, that there's looting and fires going on almost everywhere these protests are at. That's just the way the media is portraying it. It's not just Fox News media, but you have guys who are in CNN. They got a burning building in the background, and they're sitting there talking about how these protests are mostly peaceful. You know, you look at all the graffiti and the damage and the amount of damage to property, and it's ridiculous. Oh, does property equate to the same as life? Well, livelihoods, I think, equates as life. And if people can't open up their businesses and do things within their business, or have to pay a tax to Black Lives Matter within, what is that called, the Chad or Chaz, then there are issues there, right? The extortion, bro. That was what was going on. All right. So here's the thing. Terry Crews is on Don Lemon's national news or whatever, and basically says that Black Lives Matter movement started because of police brutality. Wrong. Then he just basically said, if you want to start a movement that is about gun violence, then start your own. But there's already these things that exist. So keep that in mind, please. Then this next one, it's one of those stupid Instagram things where they ask a question and then they have the answer, and then at the bottom they have a guy. All right, so the question is, if Black Lives Matter, why don't they also protest black on black crime? The answer, Black Lives focuses on the violence that black people face at the hands of law enforcement. Black on black crime technically does not exist, as crime is also intra-racial, race on race, blah, 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 which is very true, basically because you end up killing the people who you're around. White Americans, 81% of white Americans who are killed by other white Americans. 89% of black people who are killed by black Americans. Unfortunately, 50% of the murders that are created, 50% of the murders that are done by Black Americans, unfortunately. And that's a different video for it. And I've touched a little bit on that on other videos on why that is. Then it goes on to say, but if you're looking for organizations that work to reduce crime in inner cities, then I would suggest Googling Pure Violence, Stop the Violence, and Parishioners on Patrol. Of course, if you really cared, you would have already done this, and I wouldn't be making you look foolish. Well, here's my answer to that. Black Lives Matter looks foolish because in their mission statement, they are constantly talking about how all Black lives matter, right? So they look foolish. This guy also looks foolish along with Don Lemon, because they both think is that it was started out of police brutality. It wasn't. Black Lives Matter. On blacklivesmatter.com /about / if you look it up, they're about, it says hashtag Black Lives Matter was founded in 2013 in response to the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's murderer, Mr. Zimmerman. I can't remember if it's George or Mark. Pretty sure it's Mark. Well, I'm just going to say Mr. So Mr. Zimmerman. And let's pay attention here. Here's the first important part. Black Lives Matter Foundation Incorporated. That's the first important part. Incorporated. It is a corporation, which, according to the Marxists and progressives and a lot of these groups, corporations are evil. So you take that for face value. Is a global organization, and what else are they always complaining about? The global government taking over, and this global entity, and there's like these puppet masters who are fingering around all the different governments, and there's only one world order. So there we go again. Is a global organization in the US, UK, and Canada. And what is their mission? Whose mission is to eradicate white supremacy? And build local power to intervene in violence inflicted on the Black communities by the state. And here's the important thing. Here's the underlying thing. And vigilantes. And vigilantes. Vigilante justice. Okay. First thing I want to tackle is the mission to eradicate white supremacy. Eradicating white supremacy is not going to fix the issues with Black America. What's going to fix the issues with Black America are individual Black Americans saying, I am not going to allow racism to stop me. I'm not going to allow opposition to stop me. I'm not going to allow my environment to stop me. And then what we also need are a group of Black Americans and white Americans. Scratch that. What we need is a group of Americans to support these individuals and help them rise out of the situation. The government only hurts, only breaks, only hampers. The evidence is from 1964 to now, when they started implementing all the Great Society Acts. So all the stuff that they've done as far as welfare, abortion, what's the other thing? Minimum wage, affirmative action, all of those things that were made to help out Black people, because that's what they were mainly intended to do, have not. Okay. And in all actuality, before all these programs actually went off, Black Americans were better off. Single parenthood rate 25% before all this went off. I think at its highest point before the welfare state kicked in is at 34%. Right? So in the 20s, it went from the 20s to the 60s. We're talking in a span of 40 years. We're talking about a span of 40 years. There was there was less than that. There was less than 10% increase, because it went from 25% to 34%. Within less than 10 years, the single parent rate went from 34% to 74%. So that didn't help. And then why did that happen? Because it encourages, if you need help, if you're a family who truly honestly needs help, and there's two parents in the home, welfare does not assist two-parent homes. It assists, especially back then, it assists single parents. So they can't be under the same roof. So they made a sacrifice in hopes that they would use the system in order to wiggle their way to get out of their situation. And that system facilitates the creation of a vacuum. It takes some determination to get out of that system. It takes some real discipline to get out of that system. And it's purposefully done. All right. So white supremacy has never really held back individual Black Americans. We have plenty of examples of people who rose above their station and rose above their caste in life, who rose above their environment, who rose above a culture, because what they wanted back in the day was to be free, to read, to learn, to educate, and become whatever they wanted to become. They gained that freedom and they took off with it. There was, even back then, there was a lot of opposition to the individual development of Black Americans, because there were plenty of progressives that didn't think that these poor little niggers had the brain development and the acumen to be able to rise above their station. And so they put in programs that actually hindered them. And those 4 programs that I mentioned before is what it does. So, but despite that, we have a crap ton of hardworking, independent, self-actualized Black Americans who are successful in this country today. Oprah, Kevin Hart, Dr. Ben Carson, General Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, Dr. Thomas Sowell, Dr. Walter Williams, Larry Elders, and the list goes on and on and on. Even on the progressive side, we have people who are doing very well for themselves, like what's that fool's name? Cory Booker. He's doing well for himself. He's a senator, and the guy's rich, right? You have Kamala Harris. She's doing much better than the average human being on Earth. Period. We're not even talking about Black Americans at that point. You have that Omar senator. I believe it's Ilham. Ilham. I think it's Ilham Omar. Senator Ilham Omar. You have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's doing far better than she was in her bartender days. She better be careful, because she's going to be part of the system that needs to be culled from America in her eyes. So yeah, there's plenty of examples on both sides. One side is proud of it, and the other side shuns it while pretending to be a part of the working class, the proletariat, the progressives, the Marxists. Yes. All right. So that's the first thing. And build local powers to intervene in violence inflicted on the Black communities by the state and vigilantes. Here's the thing. We'll talk about the state stuff. The state stuff is simple, right? The 4 things that I mentioned before, the horrible things, right? We got disarm, which are all the gun control rights. That's been going on since before America was America, since before Britain was Britain, since before nations were nations. It was perfectly understood that in order to keep control of a certain populace that you were going to oppress, you couldn't allow them to arm themselves, because if they were armed, then they could fight back. And you don't want them to fight back, because you want to be better armed. So better armed people always oppress people who are not. It is always going to happen. Okay? So in order not to be oppressed, and the forefathers knew this, you had to arm them. In 1867, there was a report that came out and said, hey, we need to make sure that the rights that are afforded to white people are also afforded to Black people, because if not, they won't be able to defend themselves. That's a fundamental right in which they need to protect life, property, and liberty. So we need to give them that opportunity. And then they wrote the Civil Rights Act of 1988 to ensure that happened. And then it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court shot it down and said that the federal government cannot enforce that rule, that it's up to the states. And then the states were like, thanks, Supreme Court, we're going to go ahead and take all these niggers' guns away, and then we're going to introduce Jim Crow and racism and segregation, and we're going to poop on them the entire time. And thank you for us helping keeping these niggers in place. So gun control is nigger control. All right. It's ridiculous. Okay, so that was that. Then you had minimum wage, right? Minimum wage was set into place basically to take away jobs from the South so that they couldn't bid on the government contracts because the cost of living in the South and the wages that they had to pay their employees was much less than what was affordable in the West and in the North, and mostly in the North it was a bunch of white people. In the South it was a bunch of black people because that's the major population. And so introduced minimum wage they introduced minimum wage for government contractors, and then the contracts went back to the North. All right. Minimum wage has historically been used to price minorities out of the job and to take away jobs out of the area because, especially if they're part of the world market, if they're a part of the world market, then they cannot compete with countries that can provide labor for much cheaper than the United States. So $15 an hour isn't helping anybody. Instead of having inflation and inflating our currency, what I think would be a good idea is we strengthen the power of the dollar. All right. There's all kinds of theories, and I remember the theories in high school, and I continuously just thought to myself, that is just dumb. All right. That another video for another time. So that's by the state. And they claim that police are just murdering black people in the droves. Here's a fact: 354 million interactions with civilians. Black Americans are 3 times more likely to be involved with the police, even though they are 13% of the population. We're all Americans, right? Can we agree on that? So the whole black and white thing is just to prove a point. I don't believe in it. I think it's dumb. So I'm only making this to make a point. All right. So we got black Americans are 3.6. They're over 3 times more likely to have interactions with the police, even though black people make up 13%. Black Americans make up 13% of the population. Now, white Americans make up 61, 64%. They make up the majority of the population. All right. And they have per capita less interactions with the police than black Americans. And yet white Americans are killed more than black Americans. So black Americans have more interactions with the police and killed less. White Americans have less interactions with the police and are killed more. Here's another unfortunate thing, like I mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, we are in a society that fosters the belief that black Americans are victims of racism and slavery, even though it didn't really hold back a lot of people before civil rights of 64, because there were plenty of successful doctors and businesses. There was this thing called Black Wall Street, all these other different things, right, that were successful. And then the jealousy of the wonders of capitalism. The wonders of capitalism took so many black people out of poverty. Within the system was created another system, and they were successful. And then some resentful, sad people who didn't do as well as these black people burned it down to the ground. What does that sound like to me? Well, it sounds like Marxist, because that's what Marxists do. They say, you have more than me, and the reason why you have more than me is because of predatory capitalists' idealisms, and you need to be taken out. So Marxists and Black Lives Matter should be happy that Black Wall Street was taken out, because they use predatory capitalist innovation to rise above out of poverty and improve their lives. See how hypocritical these people are? All right. So vigilantes, they're specifically talking about white vigilantes. But the thing is there are gangs, and gangs have street justice. Gangs rule the area, right? They rule the area that they're in, and if someone kills their folks, they go back and they kill the other person's folks. So you have Crips and the Bloods, for prime example, the oldest gang in America. You have the Crips and the Bloods. A Blood kills a Crip, Crips get mad, Crip kills a Blood. Vigilante justice right there. Vigilantes. These are vigilantes. So if all Black Lives Matter, as they claim, then they would stop this nonsense of just police brutality and look at what's really killing Black Americans. It's the 390 something people, I'll just say 390 as a ballpark, right? Plus or minus. All right. The 390 Black Americans that were fatally shot by police is an anomaly. There was overall 1,072 people fatally shot in 2019 alone. 1,074 Americans, white, black, Mexican, Polynesian, Native American, go continue. You throw it out there, that's how many, that's who were shot. 1,074. 354 million interactions with the police. Doesn't even equate to 1%. I don't know where my phone is. Here it is. Let's do the math on that real quick. All right, we're gonna do the math on that real quick. 3, 1, wait, hold on. We're gonna go 10172 divided by 354, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 equal. Wow, that is 0.00003%. If you want to get technical, add another 0 and another 3. All right. It's an anomaly. It's an anomaly. What that idiot did to George Floyd is an anomaly, and it should be treated as such, that it shocks the senses in such a manner that that man pays dearly for what he did to George Floyd, that human being. Okay. And everyone keeps on talking about, oh yeah, George Floyd sparked more blah 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 because right here, Black Lives Matter Foundation is a global organization in the US, the UK, and Canada. They probably have ties everywhere, right? More than just those places. But where were all those riots that were going? There was some in France, and there was some here, and there was some there, right? In Spain and all this other stuff. But that's why, because the civil rights movement in America was an American civil rights movement. There is no other country at the time that had the same constitution that guaranteed everybody the same rights and liberties and stated that they were inalienable to all human beings other than the United States. That's why when Martin Luther King was murdered, it wasn't as big as a deal. The other reason why it wasn't as big as a deal is because you didn't have this organization with their fingers all over the world, as they say, a global organization. That's why, people, they're global. They literally have hundreds of millions of dollars at their fingertips to do what they need to do to create all this chaos. It is a horrible, ugly tragedy that George Floyd was murdered at the hands of those 4 individuals. Because, at the end of the day, they said, hey, listen, we need to do something because this is not good. This guy's a human being. We need to stop. All right. They need to have that type of leeway in order to do that. Right? It's an anomaly. The people who are shot, it's a nano of a percent. It's ridiculous to pretend like this is something that's going on all the time when there are literally thousands. I think in 18, there was like 7 or 6,000 Black Americans who were murdered. 7,000. And 83% of it, 89% of it was from other Black Americans. That's the issue. This Black Lives Matter garbage is exactly that, garbage. And that's the proof. Those are empirical facts that anyone can look up. If you can start looking into the reasons why, that's fine. if you start saying it's because of racism and all this other stuff, well, if it was, then 89% of the people who were murdered wouldn't be by other black people. Okay? Back on vigilante justice, we're talking about gang violence, we're talking about all this other stuff. Vigilante justice, street justice, whatever you want to call it, this is what they stand against. When violence is inflicted on black communities by the state and vigilantes. Vigilantes are gang members, yo. They're predators, but they're gang members. Vigilantes are people who are loosely associated with Black Lives Matter who are killing black cops. Those are vigilantes. People who are stopping, who are falsely imprisoning or kidnapping or whatever. When you start looking at the laws, when you stop somebody from being able to move freely and they can't move back, they can't move forward, they can't escape, you're a vigilante at that point. And then when those people are afraid for their lives because they've been watching the news and seeing that people are getting beat up just because they believe a different way, or they're just trying to drive through, they're trying to drive through, and then you have people hitting their car, and people are people, right? So they're gonna panic a little bit and be in fear for their lives, and then they take off, and then you have people shooting at them for trying to keep their families safe. Prime example, what happened in Atlanta during that whole protest. A car pulled into a parking lot. Someone thought there was some nefarious stuff that was going along, and they took the law in their own hands and shot at a car. And a poor young girl at the age of 8 was killed by this vigilante. Not a single peep out of Black Lives Matter, and yet they claim from their own website, from their own lips, from their own founders, they claim that they are about intervening when violence is inflicted upon black communities by the state and by vigilantes. And here we have prime example after example after example after example when these vigilantes who are gang members, these vigilantes who are these protesters, who are these rioters, who are these domestic terrorists. There was a Wendy's who called the cops on Rayshard Brooks, who was drunk, passed out at the drive-thru, involved in an act that kills over 10,000 people a year. Over 10,000 people a year. There are more people killed as a result of drunk driving than there are people killed who are shot by the police. 10 times more people drive in 2019. 10 times more people are killed by drunk driving than were shot by the police. Shot and killed by the police. 10 times more. And guess what? A lot of times it wasn't the people who were drinking who got murdered or who were killed. It's the families. That's why MAD exists, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. So you had this person involved in that. Then he violated his parole. That comes up on the system. He didn't pass the field sobriety test, and he blew a 0.108 something on the breathalyzer. Can I just go home? My friend, not only did you break the law, but you also violated your parole. What can I do for you? They're going to equate it as, oh yeah, well, white people get to go home and blah, 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 blah. This person is an individual, number one. Just so happened to be black. Just so happened to be on parole. Just so happened to be drunk. Just so happened to blow 0.02% over the breathalyzer, over the law. And he was passed out. So first you have public drunkenness. So there was all these little things that you have. You have public drunkenness, driving while intoxicated. You could put endangering lives. You could put trespassing if you wanted to. These people burned a building down. They burned down Wendy's. How much do you want to bet that the majority of the people that were working there were Black Americans? So they burnt down the building where people work, so they no longer have a job. They burnt down a building where people eat, so that's one less option that people have to go to. Hey, it's Wendy's though, right? They got salads though. You can eat kind of healthy there. So there's one less place that people have that they can go eat. That's one less place that the city can collect tax revenue from. That's one less business that puts money into the schools. You want your neighborhood to improve, reduce crime, take it upon yourself individually to reduce crime, gang members, reduce crime. What do all the gangsters say? Peace is good for business. All these businesses are going to come into your area. Why are they going to go into your area if they know that the first sign of some type of when Black Lives Matter gets everybody riled up that they're going to lose their business? It's not worth the risk. Then all that stuff happened, right? This vigilantism, right? Then a car drives up, a rioter, a protester, whoever they are, shot into a vehicle and killed a little girl. A young Black American. Vigilantism. This is why people are asking. I don't know why the people haven't articulated this. I don't know why people just haven't brought this up. It only makes sense to me because everything to me is all about empirical evidence. It's about objective evidence, and this is as objective as it gets from the horse's mouth. Why? They're against vigilantism, and here's all the examples of vigilantism. By combating, they're combating, right? They're fighting, right? And countering acts of violence by burning places down that call the cops on people. They didn't know what was wrong with that guy. They called 911. The cops responded. It started off nice. Rayshard Brooks was mostly peaceful that night until he wasn't. And then he got himself killed. By combating and countering acts of violence, creating space for Black imagination and innovation, and creating Black joy, we are winning immediate improvements on our lives. What in God's name is Black joy? How is it different than any other joy? This is another reason why people are claiming that Black Lives Matter is racist. Because they're talking about stupid crap like Black joy. What is Black joy? What does that mean? It means nothing. Because what Black joy means to a Black American in Oregon is different than what Black joy means than someone in New York, and different to what a Black American thinks in Alaska, what a Black American thinks in Georgia, Mississippi, so on and so forth. You go across the country, it looks different because we are sovereign states in a republic under a federal democratic system, and we are all individuals. What does the Black joy look like? What does the Puerto Rican Black joy look like? What does the Haitian Black joy look like? What does Congo and Cape Verde and South Africa and Nigeria and Ecuador and Brazil, and these are all where all these Black people are at. Why? What? What is Black joy? Buying into stereotypes? Ridiculous. Black imagination and innovation. When you look at a filament light bulb, you are looking at Black imagination and Black innovation. because it was improved upon by a Black American. When you look at the farms that are out there, that are in the countryside, you're looking at Black innovation because it was a freed slave, a Black freed slave who did a crap ton of innovation for agriculture. Crap ton in America. Stoplights, Super Soaker, NASA, math, astronomy. Astronomy is important today because of what's that fool's name? Doggone it! It was right there in my mind. It's Neil deGrasse Tyson's hero. I see his face. I hear him talking. The poem is the little blue dot. I cannot remember his name. He sent the gold disc on the Voyager. What is his name? Anyways, you look up those few things, you know what I'm talking about. It's because of that guy and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Everybody loves Neil deGrasse Tyson. He has several different TV shows. Oh, but man, we are kept down, you know. There's no Black imagination. There's no Black innovation. There's none of that stuff. Hip hop, a prime example. Rock and roll, blues, jazz. There's no need for it because America fosters it. Blues, huge, huge in America. Everybody in Europe in the 60s and the 50s, they knew who Howlin' Wolf was. They knew who B.B. King was. They knew who Jimi Hendrix was. They revered those people. And they were shunned in America because they didn't care about that garbage. They know more about blues than a lot of Americans did in the day, back in the day. Ridiculous. Rock and roll. You got Little Richard. You got R&B. You got James Brown. You have the sisters. What are they called? I'm drawing a blank because I don't want to get too far off. You know, Aretha Franklin's, Gladys Knight. All of these innovators and imaginations. It's above and beyond ridiculous. They are trying to create an enemy because that's the only way that they can exist. They can only exist because they are Marxist, number one. The two of the three founders, I know for a fact, are Marxists because they say that they are trained Marxists. Okay? So that's a fact, right? And they believe that everything capitalism is evil. They believe that everything white is racist. Do not capitulate to these people because they will hold trials as the same way that they did in the Gulag Russia, and they will hold white people accountable for being silent. They will arrest them for speaking their mind. How do you correct something? You say something stupid, people correct you. You're able to have a discussion about it. You're able to evolve your thinking. When you create rules on speech, you create a vacuum of liberty that fosters racism. A prime example is all you got to do is listen to one Black Lives Matter speech. All you have to do is listen to one Black Lives representative. All you have to do is listen to one person who supports Black Lives Matter and listen to what happens when your ideas are not challenged. You come up with stuff like this. You are winning nothing to improve the immediate improvements of our lives. You're doing nothing but actually making our lives worse. Since you've created all this madness, more people have died. More Black people have died in a shorter period of time. In this short period of time, than like all of like 6 months. You took half of the year. You take 1 month versus half the year of last year. More Black people have died as a result of it than last year, than 6 months of last year. You have done nothing but endanger black people. Once the idiot whites who are following you realize that there was a prime example, people. They're only going to get worse. Here's the example, right? We have allies. Whites are our allies. They have allies who think like us, so they are our allies. But because you're our ally, this happened in Chaz, and because you are here in Chaz, we mandate that every white person gives $10 to one black person because of your privilege, because of your white superiority. People, first they wanted to take down Columbus's statue, then General Lee, then George Washington, then Abraham Lincoln. There was a Civil War memorial that celebrated the black troops who fought for the Union against slavery to help emancipate themselves, to become citizens of this country, which they did, which wasn't recognized by the state. The federal government recognized that it wasn't being recognized by the state, and they attempted to implement rules and regulations in order to force the implementation of freedom amongst all of their citizens. And the Supreme Court stepped in and stopped it. The Supreme Court, as far as my knowledge, never ruled in the favor of any Black American that took their case to the Supreme Court for equal treatment under the law. Because the good old boys were already voted in for life. All right. There are those examples with statues. It is only, and it's continued. White people, there are some racist white people. The majority of white people are racist. Now, all white people are racist because you have conscious racism and unconscious racism. Therefore, all white people are racist. You're racist without even knowing that you're racist. Then they said, America is racist. The principles of we the people have certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, is racist. The 14th Amendment, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any laws that shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any persons within the jurisdiction the equal protections of the law. That's racist. So what do you do with that? You tear it all down and you recreate. Recreate it into what? Democratic socialism. What is the goal of socialism? The goal of socialism is to evolve towards communism. What is communism? Communism is a governmentless entity where everybody does what they're supposed to do because we're a community. Everybody gets turns to be a doctor. Everybody gets turns to be a garbage person. Everybody gets turns to be an electrician. Everybody gets turn. Everybody. Dumb. That is the ultimate goal of communism. To form a system where there are no hierarchies. Amazing. We are expansive. We are a collective of liberators who believe in an inclusive and spacious movement. We believe that in order to win and bring as many people along the way with us, we must move beyond the narrow nationalism that is all too prevalent in Black communities. What do they mean by that? What do they mean by what do they mean by nationalism? Believing in the principles of freedom, of the 14th Amendment, that all persons who are citizens or naturalized in the United States and the states within, there shall be made no laws to abridge the rights, and all citizens shall be protected and not deprived the person of life and liberty and property without due process, blah, 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 blah. People who believe in that. People like Martin Luther King Jr., who says we will reach the goal of freedom in Birmingham and all over the nation because the goal of America is freedom. The goal of America is freedom. That makes him a nationalist. We need to shut up the people who believe in the American dream of freedom. What the civil rights people, including Malcolm X, including Martin Luther King, including every other single rights, including Frederick Douglass, they were saying, you have a system here that is perfect, that allows freedom for all human beings, but you haven't realized it yet. We haven't realized true freedom in America because not everybody is free. Well, now that all of those Jim Crow laws have been abolished and the extra power of the federal government has stepped in, enabled the federal government to dictate to the states the fair treatment of their citizens in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We've reached the goal. The goal is there. It's been achieved. In 1968, it gave the federal government the teeth behind the actual law, the act, to enforce the 13th, 15th, and 14th. I don't know why I skipped the 14th amendment. So Black Lives Matter, you are not needed. We must ensure we are building a movement that brings all of us to the front. Fine. Okay. What else does Black Lives Matter support besides state, the eradication of white supremacy, the eradication of state and vigilante violence? We affirm the lives of Black, queer, and trans folk, disabled folk, undocumented folk, folk with records, women, and all Black lives along the gender spectrum. All Black lives, people. There it is. But they continue. Our network centers those who have been marginalized within Black liberation movements. So that's where you come from. That's where you get intersectional feminism and civil rights and all this other stuff, because not all women suffer the same things that other women do, and not all, it's not enough that we're talking about equality for all. You have to put yourself into a special group and say, I am a gay Black man. Well, I'm a trans gay Black woman, and I don't feel that they're speaking to my subgroup. They're talking about freedom for everybody. They're talking about freedom for everybody. That includes you. Ridiculous, man. So they keep on creating these subgroups in order to cause separation. They are creating segregation within their group, and that's why it's going to fall apart. It's going to be bloody. So the first thing that'll be bloody is if these people end up taking power, because what they want to do is they want to take away everybody's property. That's the end goal, right? It's not going to be like overnight, right? It's going to be over time. Okay. So, and this is stuff that they believe in. They believe in Marxism. We're going to go into Marxism in another video. Right after this one, I'm going to make another video, and I'm going to post it because I had to post this. We are working for a world where Black lives are no longer systematically targeted for demise. No, you are not. No, you are not. 0.00000303% of interactions with police end up in fatal shootings is not a system that is targeting Black lives. Welfare, affirmative action, gun control, minimum wage, and abortion. Those things target the black population. How do you know this? Look at the population rates, stayed stagnant for 50 years. So at first, before the abolition of slaves, and even a few years afterwards, the black population was at like 19%. In the 20s, it dropped down to 10%. 1920 went down to 10%. Stayed, or before that. Anyways, it stayed at 10% for like 50 years. And then just now, it's been small little upticks. But we've basically stayed since the 60s about 12%, 13% of the population. Sometimes we go up, sometimes we go down. 300, is that right? 300,000 babies were aborted in 2018. That same year, 270,000 people were killed by all other actions. That means over 500,000 people, Black Americans, were killed. 500,000. Well, died. Let me say that. 500,000 Black Americans died. Over half of them were murdered. Over. More Black Americans die from abortion than from natural causes, accidents, either car, job, whatever, fatal shootings, gang violence, gun violence, diabetes, heart attacks, lupus, cancer, so on and so forth. Tens of thousands of more babies are killed than people who are dying from all other causes. Black people. What else do these people say? We affirm our humanity, our contributions to this society, and our resilience in the face of deadly oppression. Who is killing you guys? They are treating you guys with kid gloves. The rules of engagement are so skewed for you powder puff pansies. You are literally throwing bricks at police. You are literally throwing explosives at police. And not a single one of you idiots have been shot. You get caught on video, DHS comes up, they snatch you up, they take you, and unmarked vehicles, and Gestapo, you committed a crime, you jackass. Of course you're gonna get freaking arrested. Defacing government property, it's a crime. All of your outlets for freedom of speech, and you're gonna commit a crime? Oh, well, Martin Luther King and his group, they were seen as extreme. They got all the permits because they were about lawful protest. They were about lawful protest. They got all the permits, they got all the permissions, did everything that they're supposed to do. In all rights, they had every single right to sit on anywhere in that bus, according to the 14th Amendment and the Civil Rights Act of 1888. Yep, 1888. According to the 14th Amendment, they had every single legal right to sit there, regardless of what that state said. It was their unalienable right to sit there, not your unalienable right to deface property. The call for Black lives to matter is a rallying call for all Black lives striving for liberation. They have a great publishing campaign, right? So they have, if you don't know what to say, because you can't formulate your own thoughts, this is what you can say. I'm sorry for your loss. This is for Trayvon Martin specifically. At Sabrina Fulton. I can't imagine your pain, but I will hashtag talk about Trayvon Martin and support his legacy. That's just one of like 20 examples that they have. Some more examples that they have is I want to take a minute to talk about hashtag Trayvon Martin. On the 5th anniversary of his death, Trayvon Martin loved his family so much that he got tattoos of their names on his body. He was an honors English, but he liked math better. He dreamed of becoming a pilot. Trayvon Martin was a 17-year-old son, student, and boyfriend. Yet he was murdered 5 years ago because someone decided he didn't belong in their neighborhood, and his murder was not punished. His murderer was not punished because people think it's justifiable to be afraid of black boys. So let's hashtag talk about Trayvon Martin so we can remember that being afraid of black people is a lie that we are taught is normal, but that we can absolutely unlearn. Donate to Trayvon Martin Foundation today, so on and so forth. All right, so let's break that down. He didn't get off because people are afraid or taught that it's normal to kill black folks. He got off because there was a preponderance of evidence that was presented by the defense and by the prosecution that failed. The prosecution failed to show that he murdered him on purpose, and it was premeditated, and for whatever, I don't even remember what he was the charges were. I don't remember if it was first, second, or manslaughter, or whatever the case may be. But there was enough evidence to show that he acted in self-defense, and so in that matter he was released. He was found not guilty. So it wasn't because we're taught that it's normal. It wasn't because we're racist. It wasn't because people think that it's justifiable to be afraid of black boys. Careful, white folks, and this is why. White communities are used to conscientiously and unconsciously maintain the racist policies and practices that led to Trayvon Martin's death. And as white people, we must speak out against these policies and practices. When we remain silent on the sidelines, we are complicit in maintaining these unjust systems. I'm in a gang. I'm wearing a color. I go on another street that doesn't represent the same colors that I do. I am shot. My boys roll up and shoot them. And then they come back and they shoot us, and it's a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What do you call that, Black Lives? That's vigilantism. You know what our coon leader, Martin Luther King, would say to that? This is what he would say to that. We know that there are many things wrong in the white world, but there are many things wrong in the black world too. We cannot keep on blaming the white man. There are things we must do for ourselves. According to Black Lives Matter, that statement made by Martin Luther King makes him a nationalist, makes him a white apologist, just makes him one of these tap dancing coons who is trying to be a part of the system. It doesn't make any sense to me. How expecting freedom that is guaranteed by the Constitution, by the law, is somehow bad. I don't understand it. Every single law that is out there, according to the 14th Amendment, is guaranteed to every single Black American. We, as the Black people, need to start acting as such and start demanding as such and start being that. American nationalism is different than any other type of nationalism out there because American nationalism isn't about your color. It's not about your tribe. It's not about your political affiliation. It's about the principles of the United States. And the principles of the United States is about individualism and is about freedom. What Martin Luther King was saying in the 60s and in the 50s, if he were to say those today, they would designate him a house nigger. Just like they do with Larry Eldridge, just like they do with Thomas Sowell, Dr. Thomas Sowell, just like they do with Walter Williams. And the reason why they believe that is because they think that these black leaders are are nationalists. And because these black leaders are nationalists, it actually held back Black American progress. What actually held us back are the five deadly sins of the American system that was voted in by a particular party and a particular president. And those five deadly sins are gun control, welfare, affirmative action, minimum wage, and abortion. Every single one of those systems are about control, whether it be population control, whether it be control whether or not these people can protect themselves, or control over their lives. Because when you are in welfare, you get sucked into a system that fosters single parenthood, that fosters mass incarceration, that fosters criminal elements. It's not a guarantee, but it definitely fosters those things. And they've taken advantage of those systems. And you want to talk about something that was even a bigger sin, is not educating our children properly. These people are not good for America. They are not good for Black Americans. They are not good for America, period, because they are attempting to redefine America as hateful and racist. The American principles are not hateful. The American principles are not racist. Here we go. More nonsense from Black Lives Matter. Movement for Black Lives demands. So this is what the corporation wants. The corporation, called Black Lives Matter, demands an end to the wars against Black people. Okay. We demand reparations and targeted long-term investments to build a world where Black Lives Matter. There was this little thing that happened called the Civil War, because the southern states decide to secede from the government because the rules that the government was forcing and the tariffs and the taxes that they were taxing onto the South to help abolish slavery, to make it more marketable to get rid of slaves than to keep slaves, they went to war. So that happened already. That also happened in the Civil Rights Act of 1888, but a portion of that was shot down by the Supreme Court. And that portion was that the federal government would be able to step in, and the Supreme Court ruled that it is not the federal government's job to do that. It is the state's job to ensure the freedom of their people. Yeah, we're going to give. This is what happens when you give too much power to the state. And that's why it's important for you to be able to arm yourself and to be knowledgeable and to fight against the tyranny. Because if you want an example of what it is, what a society looks like when they are unable to defend themselves, all you got to do is look at Jim Crow America. The corporation of Black Lives Matter demands a defunding of systems and institutions that criminalize and cage Black Americans. We demand economic justice and self-determination. Again, something that was already created, but as a model of from the model from which you speak was destroyed. From a model that you support, it was destroyed. Free market was lifting Black Americans out of poverty, out of slavery, out of ignorance, into the educational system, into freedom. And the powers that be used government to squash that. And to dismantle it. Ladies and gentlemen, Black Lives Matter does not have a vested interest whatsoever in Black lives or the American principles that this country was built on. Reparations is not going to help anybody. Giving people money is not going to help anybody. A prime example, communist Cuba, right? They ran out all the doers and they had all their money. Within 50 years, they ran out of all that money and now they're poor. They got rid of all the doers. Communist Russia got rid of all the doers, all the successful farmers, the dairy ranchers, all these successful people that knew how to do stuff, and they went backwards. Reparations isn't going to help anybody. Education, long-term investments to build a world where Black lives matter. Black lives do matter so much, and you know what? Thing is that the Democrat Party. I usually don't do this, but I'm going to do this right now. The Democrat Party knows that the black people are valuable, but they want them under their control. That's why they keep on expanding welfare. That's why they keep on expanding the minimum wage lie. That's why they keep on expanding affirmative action. That's why they keep on expanding all these different things. But they have to be able to keep them under control. So how do they keep them under controls? With the three strikes law, three strikes law, with the legislation to build more prisons that Joe Biden put into place, with abortion, with fostering gang violence and fostering single parenthood with welfare. So they're fostering these systems that cause single parent homes. And we all know that single parent homes, this has been known since the 20s. And that's why it was such a like, oh, what's going on? We need to help out these niggers because they don't know what they're doing. So we need to give them welfare. And then some like evil people were sitting in power like, yes, we will give them welfare and it will create more single parent homes, which will cause their children to do crime. And then they'll go to jail and then they'll commit federal felonies and then they can't vote. And then we've got them. It's a scam, man. You guys talk about these. And then you know what's so funny about this? It's not even real conspiracy theory. This is like connect the dots. This is like the back of the cereal box, easy connect the dots. You know, you go to Denny's and they have the little connect the dots thing, and like 4-year-olds are doing this crap and figuring this crap out. You know, you can literally just look at the history of who supported what, and then you look at the results of what happened, and then you look at what before 1964, before the Great Society Act. You look before that time, and you see all this progress that is being made. Literacy rates going up. Black Wall Street created and then destroyed. But perseverance, individual pride, self-pride. And then after, I'm a victim. Playing the victim. You can be victimized. You can be victimized. But it depends upon how you react, which determines whether or not you are playing the victim. If you play the victim, I was victimized, woe is me, or that sucked horribly. Let me go ahead and get some counseling. Let me get some therapy. Let me get some help. Let me talk to a pastor. Let me talk to some free resources because they're out there, folks. Let me figure this stuff out and let me just move forward. Not playing the victim. You were the victim. What do they call that now these days, right? The hero, brave, triumphant. Until you're talking about Black people, then you deserve it. Then you deserve pity. Then you deserve preferential treatment. And when people talk about taking away preferential treatment, it seems as though they are being racist because you're so used to getting your way, being treated a certain way. Oh, I'm getting preferential treatment. Now you're talking about equality? No, thank you. I'll take this preferential treatment over equality any day. What? I have to work hard just like he has to work hard? No, I'm not going to do that. So there was a guy who came up to, I don't remember the guy's name, but he did the most important conversation of 2020. And this group of panelists, and he was asking questions. He had a person come up to him at a historically Black college and say, I will never make as much as my white counterpart. I will never be as wealthy. And he's right. he won't be. With an attitude and thought like that. Kevin Hart didn't think like that. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson didn't think like that. Dr. Ben Carson didn't think like that. Colin Powell didn't think like that. Condoleezza Rice didn't think like that. Cory Booker didn't think like that. Kamala Harris didn't think like that. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did not think like that. The same people who are saying you should think like that didn't think like that themselves. And now they're in politics. Lil Wayne didn't think like that. What's that fool's name? Michael B. Jordan. He didn't think like that. Look where he's at. But yeah, he's out there talking about, I'm not going to have the police do any of my security. I'm going to take more funding out of the police. So the police are going to be worse. Freaking idiots. A lot of the funding that the police use goes into background checks. They go into intense, deep background checks. They're talking to family members, teachers, past employers. They're looking at their residents. They talk to schoolmates. They look at Facebook. They look at their social media like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. They go into all of this stuff. They go into their background. That costs money. Do those things. And you want to defund the police? Give them more funding to do more background checks. There's a psychologist that said that was on the Joe Rogan Experience, and she's a doctor, so she knows what she's talking about. It's very rarely that they get people that pass through all that stuff. There's very few people that get in. It's an anomaly. It's probably 0.00000303% of the people that actually are able to get through. They go through lie detector tests. They go through psych evals. They go through all these different steps in order to become police officers. And I think she said like 98% of the police precincts, they have to go through all this stuff. And it's expensive. And they want to take away the funding. Give them more funding so they can do more background checks. It's a simple thing. Defunding the police is the stupidest idea since Marxism. It's dumb. Sounds good to like write in chalk on your window. Oh, defund the police, yeah, fight the system. You're fighting the system to destroy your ability to live free and to live free. What else? We demand an end to anti-blackness, especially the one that led to Trayvon Martin's death. Clothing, music, pop culture. What in the world is anti-blackness? What in the world exists in America that has not been touched by Black innovation and imagination? Country music, blues, rock and roll, hip hop, clothing, art, style, basketball, laws, NASA, heart surgery, neurosurgery. There is nothing in America that we as Black Americans had not had our hands in. Every single war that there was, from the Revolutionary War to the current war in Afghanistan, every single there has been Black hands that have been in those things, fighting for freedom, fighting for liberties, even when we did not receive the very things that we deserved under the Declaration of Independence, that we deserved by law, by the Civil Rights Act of 1888, the 1964, by the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. It's law. Now, we're not free because of the law. We are not free because of mentality. Our minds are not free because we're seriously having this debate that the plight of Americans is due to a legacy of slavery and Jim Crow, even though there were thousands upon thousands of examples of successful Blacks, doctors, inventors, people who held patents, farmers, businessmen, and women. Literally the next year after slavery, through Jim Crow, through the Racist Great Society Act, to now, senators and representatives, governors, mayors, people in positions of power and could actually enact change. What is the excuse? The legacy of slavery? There were nurses and doctors the next year after slavery. There is hardly an invention that is out there today that there hasn't been some type of interaction with Black people. And well, unfortunately, what there's been this education system that has undermined the development, because if you don't have a history, then what happens? Are you successful? Well, you have examples to look back on. What do we know? What did I learn in school? That there was slaves, that white people fought for my freedom. We were set free. Then there was some racism that happened, and then there was Martin Luther King. And then we were free, but because of the legacy and racism, legacy of slavery and racism, we're unable to continue to further our minds. I've never accepted that. And I'm free because of it. I own firearms. I've never been harassed. I've never been hassled. I've never been pulled out of the car. I've never been beaten. I've been disrespected by police, most definitely. I've been pulled over while driving black. That has definitely happened. But that didn't do anything for my money. That didn't do anything for my cost of insurance. Come on, folks. Let's go. We demand an end to state-sanctioned violence against Black people. Hashtag remembering Trayvon Martin. And the state sanction, I believe, is one of the things, is the Stand Your Ground Act. Okay, check this out. Check this out. All right. Stand your ground. Someone breaks into my house, I should be able to defend my property. Okay? Should be able to. They want to take that power away to defend yourself, because that's state sanctioned. It's the Second Amendment right, along with the other rights to defend life, liberty, and limb. State sanctioned, it is legal for abortions, right? They're not talking about abortion though, because that only keeps our population in check. I don't understand that at all. Here's the thing that you have to be careful for, man. I'll read it again. White communities are used to conscientiously and unconsciously maintain the racist policies and practices that led to Trayvon Martin's death. All right. There's not a single policy that says you can go around and follow Black people only and shoot them. Not a single policy out there that allows that, or that fosters that. It's the individuals who do the crimes, who do criminal stuff. And I'm not even saying that Trayvon Martin was doing criminal stuff until, according to Mr. Zimmerman's account of the situation, Trayvon Martin was angry with him, confronted him, punched him, knocked him to the ground, got on top of him, and started hitting him. Mr. Zimmerman, who states that he was in fear for his life, shot him twice. And what transpired, transpired. So there it is. That's what Black Lives Matter stands for. Black Lives Matter stands for standing up against vigilantes. They're against vigilante justice. So gang violence as well, because that's what gang violence fosters. They're against the people who have been killed in their name. Has anybody even came out about that little girl? Has anybody from Black Lives Matter said that that was irrehensible and that was uncalled for and that we denounced that person and turned them into police? Oh no, because they wanted to fund the police. Unless they're getting accosted or assaulted, then they want the police. Or they beat a man until he has to defend himself. I mean, the man took a good 30-second beating and finally pulled out his gun. It's not like it was the first thing he went for. He was being chased by a mob. They chased him down, they tied him to the ground. He was continuously retreating, and then and then and then he finally shot at least one person, but he shot at two people. All right. And then you can hear in the background, get his license plate, because I believe that they were talking about vigilante justice, that they wanted to get his license plate so that they can hunt him down. I don't think they were going to turn him over to the authorities because they're vigilantes. Antifa and Black Lives Matter are one and the same movement. It's just Antifa brought all the white faces. Black Lives Matter brings all the black faces. Oh boy. Here's my end message to America. First, my white Americans, please be careful. Do not support Black Lives Matter. Do not support this evil corporation. They're a corporation. They are a corporation. One more time. They are a corporation. Do boycott this corporation. It only means your demise. You can do no right in the eyes of Black Lives Matter. Even if you capitulate every single point that they make and you agree with them and you go along with them, you're still guilty of racism. And you will be judged. There's no different. Because they're trained Marxists, they're doing everything, they are in line with what happened in communist Russia with Lenin and Stalin. They're in line. Everything that they're doing is in line with communist Russia. There will be trials that will hold white people accountable for these infractions, for staying silent, for being complicit in supporting these conscious and unconscious, maintaining the racist rights of the policies and practices. Those idiot actors who that I'm guilty, I stood by. You will be some of the first that are judged and held accountable in this new government that is created by this Marxist organization. And then when they run out of all of those enemies, then they'll start infighting themselves if they don't start doing that from the get-go. So, I mean, I don't really know how to handle. And you will be required to pay, at least financially, at the bare minimum financially. And you will be created as a second-class citizen. And we gonna do what you did to us, my Black Americans. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all human beings are created equal by their creator, that there are certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. My fellow Americans, we must embrace what the 14th Amendment of this Constitution, Section 1 states. All persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process, nor deny to any person within his jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Here's an important thing. No state shall make, create, author, nor enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Racism over, people. These are one of 27 principles within the United States Constitution. The most important principles are the Bill of Rights. Know the Bill of Rights. Know your rights. So important. It's so important. It was said once that if you are a true patriot of this country, racism has no room in your heart. My fellow Americans, we are free. My fellow Americans, we are free. My fellow Americans, we are free. Now we just need to think and act as though we are. Thank you so very much for watching. God bless you. God bless America.